Hi everyone, I'm Meredith, and listen, I'm just a girl stuck in my apartment looking for someone, well, anyone to talk to. So I found some people. My guest today is Victor Dandridge. Victor's the president and editor-in-chief of the independent comic book publisher called Vantage Inhouse Productions. His brand and comics have been very much affected by the pandemic, but actually in a pretty surprising way. Victor, welcome. Let's talk about it.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. It is fantastic and so great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So I hear congratulations are in order. You're going to be celebrating 10 years next month of your self-publication company, which is called Vantage Inhouse Productions. Talk to me about that and where you guys have come in the last decade. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Number one, thank you. It's crazy because it doesn't quite feel like it's been 10 years, but looking back, you go, wow, no, I guess it has, but yeah, it started out where Vantage Inhouse really was just kind of like that itch that I needed to scratch. I had a cushy state job, making good money. And I woke up one day and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to make comics. I need to be in the field that has, guided me for the last 20 years. I need to do something. And, my family was overtly supportive. There were a couple, very practically minded, I don't want to say naysayers, but practically minded people that were like, you're leaving a cushy state job for comics? Like, are you crazy? And I'm like, I needed to do this. And 10 years later, I am the happiest I think I've ever been in my adult life.
What were the comics that inspired you?
Ooh, that's a great question. I got into comic books overall with the death of Superman. I wasn't an avid reader at the time, and being 10 years old and not really reading, my mother was worried. So when they announced death of Superman on the news, and I'm like, oh, I want to read that. She's like, wait, you want to read something? Here, get all of it. So that was a huge one. I would also say that, what else can I put up there? X-Men obviously took a big turn in the early 90s when I just started reading. So that was a big, influence.
So now with looking back, when you started your own publication brand, what was your goal in how your comics would impact readers?
At the beginning, I didn't have a goal. My goal was to just tell a story or two. It was one of those things where I wanted to have the freedom to create something from the heart, from my mind, and just kind of go out there and do it without any sort of editorial, oh, you can't tell those type of stories, or you must tell this type of story. It was one of those things where, especially being an African-American creator, I wanted the freedom to tell stories that might ring, uniquely Black or not at all. I wanted that freedom. So that was really the goal of what my initial publications were about. Now it's become a bit more nuanced, a little bit more mature, because I do recognize that I do have a platform. There are people that might look up to, what I've accomplished and want to hear what I have to say. So now it is a little bit more of an encouragement of idea, a thought, specifically, in the realm of 2020, positivity is a big point for me, wanting to create something that does that.
I want to definitely get to that, but sorry, in the not positive light, the pandemic hits 2020, right? We're fast forwarding, we're going
right.
to 10 years, and now we fast forward to where we are today. What happened to the business when the pandemic hit? I can't imagine it made comic book publishing any easier.
It did not. For the general masses, it did not. However, we in the independent market, we fit into such a very interesting niche. So the mainstream market, as Superman, Batman, Spider-Man kind of live in, they are a system, an ecosystem, if you will, a geekosystem, if you will, that's built on a bunch of structures that have to support one another. So you have publishers that need distributors that go to retailers, and if anything in that chain breaks, everything tumbles. And we saw that actually happen. COVID. Right. Absolutely. And I think a lot of people think that comics are exempt for whatever reason. And it really became obvious that that is not true. Particularly the more powerful your imprint seems, the more likely it could be disrupted by something as simple as, a safety hazard shutdown. We in the independent market, generally speaking, we're not as embraced by that mainstream system. So, to get your books distributed by a mainstream distributor is not, common. You're usually doing a lot of things word of mouth, convention sales, things like that. Now, conventions did stop. We haven't really had a convention since, and that's a huge part of the indie market. But online sales, Kickstarters, right. We found other ways, I guess, as independents, as we found other ways to get our products into people's hands. So a lot in the independent market have been thriving, where mainstream titles have been suffering significantly.
So did your readership go up? Besides the fact that people have a new endless amount of time on their hands and are just, indefinitely looking for new things to read, new things to watch, anything to do to pass the time.
Yes, our online sales literally doubled from what they had been years previous. Where for the year, what I had been accustomed to making in the year, doing conventions, and I do an average of 32 to 50 events a year. I had already hit my mid-year mark literally by June. So with having 3 months of things really totally disrupted and still maintain that same, sales mark, that's a huge, business plateau that I overcame by having books and things available for online sales.
Has it made you think post-pandemic about reshaping the business model? Like, if it can work like this, do I need to be doing it another way?
Very much so. It's one of those things where I love conventions. However, I'm seeing as conventions themselves are evolving to take over virtual space, there is going to be a necessity for a change in how we understand these things work. Strictly living off of the convention circuit is not going to be it anymore. I think it's going to be a slow groove before we ever get back to that, especially as conventions themselves are seeing that there's a bit of profitability when you don't have the overhead of a building, bringing in celebs and things like that. So everyone's going to shift in, some way, shape, or form.
How did you continue to maintain, though, if not grow, the community aspect that is around comic book readers and comic book publication? We were all so distant. How did you continue to bring people together? How did Vantage in-house continue to bring people together?
Well, what's really interesting is as much of terror that 2020 has been, I say that we actually are in a boon because it happened now as opposed to 1996, where we didn't have social media, we didn't have all these platforms that we could easily reach out and stay in contact with our friends, fans, general community, our peers, any of that stuff. So there were a lot of opportunities that cropped up, people using opportunities like Zoom, doing Facebook Lives, different things like that allowed for us to stay in communication and really kind of talk not only about ourselves, but about other people and to other people, and really kind of spread the wealth in terms of who is looking at what. I was fortunate being a celebrity moderator. I had a lot of convention companies that reached out to me that were moving to that virtual platform. So I also got to grow my audience through that. They would see me with their favorite celebs, and the question is, well, who is this guy? And let's go look him up. And then that in turn would trickle down, and it would effectively grow my readership through sales, interests, followers, all kinds of things.
That's crazy. So basically, pandemic has been a plus.
Well, I mean, kind of. I did suffer. I'm not gonna lie. I do have a sister imprint called You Create Comics, which is all about bringing comic books into the classroom.
Right.
And right when
with You Create, when schools out or has all gone remote.
Right, like that was the big killer punch. And I guess luckily we had that happen earlier in the year, so we've been pivoting since then. But early in the year, I was working with my local school system, Columbus City Schools, and we were going to do a summer camp. We were planning for in-school visits come this fall school year. All of that stuff got put on hold indefinitely. We don't know exactly how things are going to work. And I can't lie.
Able to move it to a remote, virtual.
I think we can do so with the school year stuff. I don't think that they were prepared to do it for the summer. It was too soon. So, and I fully understand that. I've been in touch with some of the administrators that I was working with before to see what kind of things we can pivot and shape in the future, because they don't really know exactly how things are going to go. So budgetarily, they're, you know, at a crossroads, because they're like, okay, do we spend this money? Do we not spend this money? If we don't spend this money, do we not get it next time? Where exactly are we? And so I have, thankfully, I've been asked to do a virtual after school program, which will be starting. Thank you. And we'll be looking into doing more virtual events with schools. Particularly, we have a virtual academy that my daughter is actually enrolled in, for those parents that were a little less keen on sending their kids back to school at the onset of the school year, wanting to see how things went. So I know that has 5,000 students in it. I am fully like prepared to, you know, engage all of them on some level with comic books in the classroom.
And I didn't. Can you tell our viewers what You Create is? I know, because
Sure.
I'm looking into all of this stuff, but I feel like
Of course. So obviously, with me not being an avid reader, when I started getting into comics on a professional level, I wanted to create a platform that would encourage kids to follow that same path. I figured there's got to be another kid out there like me that doesn't love the general reading material of Huck Finn or something like that. They want something a little bit more, you know, dynamic. And comic books do that. So here is a way for me to actively use comic books to boost and kind of foster classroom fundamentals. So we created the You Create Comics line, and it started off with a simple workbook that would allow you to create your own comic character, but it worked on aspects of vocabulary building, reading comprehension, creative writing, all the things that we do as creatives, and just put it in a classroom setting and made it, you know, easy, accessible. We developed research skills, all of those types of things that, you know, are necessary for today's students outside of teaching to test. You know, I'm a big advocate for actual learning as opposed to standardized testing learning, because I don't think that really engages students well. So that's what You Create is all about. We've actually got 9 different programs that we offer from K through 12. We do where we have a product line where you can do independent, you know, comic creation in a traditional sense. It's very hands-on. We walk you through the process of creating a comic from start to finish, and you can literally create your own materials right now.
Kids need that. So hopefully programs like this will be implemented as the school year, you know, gets off rolling more, and we're in now to a second semester of probably remote and hybrid learning. So I want to go back to something you said at the beginning about the comics that you create bringing positivity. Now, 2020 pandemic, dark time.
Yes.
And events that have sprung up around the pandemic, making things even darker. Talk to me about this new comic that you've created, What Matters.
So that is probably one of the most emotional books in my library. Aside from The Trouble with Love, this one was born literally out of the turmoil, the emotional strife of 2020 and the racial, you know, discrepancies, discriminations that so many people are experiencing. And it was a fantastic experience from a very dark, you know, occasion. So Wonder Care Presents The Kindergartenians is an all ages friendly title that I do with Justin Castaneda. And we were, you know, texting back and forth. He was checking in on my family because he's based out of Chicago, which definitely had its fair share of incidents in light of George Floyd. And there was a few here in Columbus as well. And so he knew about that, and he was, you know, checking up on my family. I was asking about his, and he really just kind of, you know, opened up, bore his soul, and was like, this is how I'm feeling. And I want to say something. I don't know what to say. You know, I need to say something. I think we need to say something. And just listening to him, the story just started to tell itself. It was, you know, not just a commentary, you know, almost a damning sort of, you know, we should be better, da, da, da. It was an explanation of this is what this statement means. When someone says Black Lives Matter, and it's not about aligning with any one particular organization, this is the concept. Because I think that's the thing that so many people were struggling with embracing. You know, if we can understand the concept, it doesn't matter what organization, you know, that flag is flown under. As long as you can understand the concept, you can get to that place of peace. And that's what we aim to do. So in only 4 pages, we told probably the most politically charged, emotionally relevant story of our careers. It was fantastic. And Justin has taken things a step further by setting up where online sales all the proceeds, he's picking a different organization to donate the proceeds to. And it's been since June, a different organization every month that he's just like, you know what? We see your effort. We're gonna give something to you. We're gonna, do our part to, open up the dialogue, to open up the conversation, open up people's eyes to the disparities that go on.
So how did the initial idea for the comic, evolve from, I'm sure, a catharsis of I just need to create something, right, and get my feelings out onto the page, to the story that we read now with What Matters?
It really was like kind of taking the things that he was saying in our conversation and really kind of allowing the characters that we created to kind of see where they would fit within the context of this world. So obviously in this world, superheroes are real. These children are the sons and daughters of the world's greatest superheroes. And the crux of it is really looking at the notion of what happens when these kids' superpowered parents are called in to intervene on the situation. Do we understand enough? Can we make them understand what is actually happening? And so through, character interactions, we see how the difference of perspectives can play out, how, having a certain life experience will, sometimes open up your perspective or blind your perspective to other people's situation because, you have an understanding, you think that might be the way of the world, but it's not. And that happens for so many people, white, black, brown. We get very lost in our perspective that we don't really see others. And this was really about pushing that narrative of trying to see something outside of your norm and being able to, at the very least, understand what someone's response might be if that's their experience.
What feedback have you heard from readers that have read What Matters? And have you gotten any pushback of like, this is not what we want comics to address? Comic books should just be, as you said initially, tights and fights.
Right.
Which to me, means something so very different, but I love the phrase.
Thank you. The response that I've gotten overtly has been extremely positive. In fact, I've had a multitude of parents say that they're using What Matters as a way to explain the situation to their young ones, whether they're white, black, brown. And I think the most beneficial piece is specifically for those people that are not black, brown, minorities, being able to use that to effectively explain a situation to their children. I've had, friends, creators say like, we didn't know how to say it. We didn't know how to form the words so that we weren't, being insensitive or scapegoating anything. You laid it out, you made it plain, but in a way that wasn't, super aggressive. It was easy and a kid could understand it because it's out of the mouths of babes. Ironically, the only pushback has been from those that you would think would not, that I should have been a little bit more deliberate with the statement of Black Lives Matter and things like that. And I understand what their intention was. We were getting the ball rolling in a conversation, and they wanted it to be the definitive conversation. And I don't think that it's fair for any one party to speak monolithically on any subject. So, that was why, the thing for me is we will start this, we will put it out here as the beginning point. Where we go from that, though, has to be worked out together. I'm not dictating to anyone, and I think that's partly why it's been effective, is by not dictating and not telling people you're wrong or this is what's right. That's not the way. I think when we can all get to that point together, that's when it's genuine. That's when it's real.
Is there going to be future editions of What Matters? I mean, I can imagine that it's superheroes can't just solve these issues in 4 pages, right?
Right.
No one has that amount of power.
Oh my goodness. If only we could. If we could. No, I don't know if in a weird sort of way, I don't ever want to have to do another follow-up to What Matters. I do think that while we utilize the kindergartens as the main characters, this does function as a standalone story. And it is not necessarily our intention to very specifically reference that this issue has happened. We kind of want it to be this timeless moment that says, this is a thing. If you ever, experience something like this, someone has said something about it, and you can use this as a conversation point. There are some other we'll call them situations that Justin and I have talked about that maybe we should address, that, in the realm of, some of the sexual harassment things that we've seen in our industry, the way that men and women aren't treated equally as individuals. We might want to touch that. But again, it gets a little tricky when you're talking about things of such an adult nature involving children.
Right.
So we want to make sure that if we do that, it's not about, the prestige or look at us. We want to tell something meaningful. And only if we have a meaningful story will we do it.
What kind of positivity do you feel that this has brought about? I mean, you're dealing with negative situations, dark situations, really just these times are tough, right?
They are.
So
The positivity is being able to engage with people. I've had a number of people that I've been close to, have revealed themselves to have differing ideas. And I don't want to say that they're wrong. I don't want to say that they're bad. They're just different. And maybe they don't understand a perspective, and being able to engage with them through this, work, has been one of the best things, because what it's showing is, one, they want to learn something. Anyone that is aiming to say, well, I don't understand. We live in a world where saying I don't know or I don't understand is an open door to get dogpiled on and, ridiculed for your ignorance, as opposed to praise for the fact that you are open to changing that. That's something that I think should be embraced. And What Matters has definitely done that very well for a lot of people that I know. But in all honesty, if it only happened for one person, that's a success for me. One person saying, you know what, I understand this better than I did before, and your, work was the cause of that. Thank you. That's really all I ever needed.
do you ever wrestle as a comic creator and as a storyteller with your works, either transporting people to, another world when having to deal with the topics that are going on in our world? I mean, something like What Matters is not escapism, right?
No.
So, but when we think of comics and when we think of storytelling in that way, that's where we naturally lend ourselves to go. So, do you ever wrestle with those themes or, the intentions for audiences?
Absolutely. One of the things that I'm very keen on representing within myself is I am a Black creator. That is what I am, but it's not specifically who I am. So in that regard, there are many things that I've had to approach storytelling with a sensitivity, recognizing that if I say something, this could be considered that monolithic view of Black people or Black thought, Black creatives. And I have to be very, cautious when I say something that could be used in that capacity. The book, The Trouble with Love, is, again, a very personal story to me. It deals with infidelities, family, forgiveness. And if I had represented it as true to my person as that story was, I did consider, am I saying that, Black men are ... Is this the statement that can be gleaned from this? And if so, how do I stay away from that? That is not the point measure under any circumstance that I'm trying to put out there. So what do I do? That was definitely one that I had to be that cognizant of, that real world place, and almost aim to kind of take that factor out of the equation with the presentation of the characters. My series, The Samaritan, is another one that is a little bit more urban oriented, which could definitely be seen as a kind of a little too real, a little too close to home for many people. What that one is, though, is a conversation about your responsibility to the environment that you're in. It's a call to arms. If you don't like where you are, do what you can to fix it. That's not saying that it's all on your shoulders, but do what you can to make the place a little bit better. So even then, I'm still trying to show a better side of things, to show that, yes, people can make mistakes and they can overcome that. You can be the smallest person on your block, but you can make the biggest impact if you just try. Anything like that, that can really get somebody to look at their life and go, this doesn't have to be it. That's the goal for me.
So as you're touching on these very positive ideas and looking forward, explain something to me.
Yes.
Vantage Inhouse is going away? This is
yes.
the beginning. That doesn't, oh, wait, what?
I know. The thing about it is really simple. As a comic book publisher, most of the time when you say that, you have a plan for an ongoing series, an ongoing imprint, different stories forever and ever. That is not my goal. What I'm aiming to do is to kind of create a series of books, a library of books, and then through the You Create platform, build up readership. Because I'm starting with kids at a young age, I can start to, rebuild interest in comics, because over the last 20, 30 years, it has dropped dramatically. And I want to be a part of rebuilding that. So if I keep the Vantage in-house library concise and tight and not forever, growing, I can actually make it so that the children that I'm integrating into comics are growing into the series that we already have. And it also means that I'm not choking out the market, and I'm giving the opportunity for other creators to shine. So I'm a big advocate for, comparisons of titles. So if you like this book, check out this book from this guy and that guy and this lady and this lady, because that way we will all grow as creatives. And then, we're creating the content that readers will consume. So yes, as much as I love making comics, I think that there should be an endpoint so that you can use that forever.
When's the end point?
The end point in terms of time is approximately 2 years from now. I would like to.
Reading it now.
I know. Well, what's funny is the big move to do that. I actually have a Kickstarter that's coming in intent to really kick off the expansive timeline and integration of these titles. One of the things that all of the books were created as were individual standalone series, but I found a way that we can actually connect them all together as to one shared multiverse. So the Kickstarter will be the first piece of showcasing how all of the books are intertwined and how you can, in fact, grow in terms of readership with these characters.
And how many pieces of this new multiverse do you want to produce?
I will definitely aim to produce all of them, which is roughly, I want to say 15 titles total. So we've got 4 out right now. And so, yes, over the next 2 years, my goal is to try to knock out the other 11. That's a lot.
And then what will be next for you as a comic creator? Is it going to all be focused on the You Create platform? Or is there a whole new publishing house and publishing initiative for Victor Dandridge?
There might be another publishing imprint that crops its way up. There's some names that I have played around with. Definitely, though, the You Create line is what I really want to focus on more than anything. I feel like making that sort of impact with kids across the country, if not the world, really would kind of bring the superheroics to home. It's great to write about people that change people's lives, but it's even better if you can do that yourself. So that's kind of where, after, a decade plus of creating some stories, I really want to get out there and see if I can impact someone directly with what I've created.
Since things have started opening up with the pandemic, have you been able to get back into your local comic book store and, do some damage, some long overdue damage? Or that's like the one thing that maybe was left off the credit card statement for a couple of months that maybe has repopulated?
Well, I mean, fortunately for me, or unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, I do a video review show called Black, White, and Red All Over, where I'm going to my local comic shop every Tuesday, and I'm reading some of the books and doing a review so that you can know what to buy on Wednesdays. So thankfully for me, they've been closed during this time period, so we can go in with social distancing measures and still keep the show running. So I've been able to effectively read a lot of books, even through quarantine, safely and not spend a lot of money on it. But I have bought, Amazon has gotten quite a few books for me. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
It's kind of true.
Very good. Well, Victor, thank you so much for talking with me. This is really exciting what's going on.
Thank you.
I have some catch up to do with Vantage in-house, but I got 2 years. So
you do. You got 2 years. You're good. You're good.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you, Meredith.
This has been Let's Talk About It. We'll talk to you next time.